Great, so welcome to this morning's class. If you want to lie yourself down in Shavasana for the start, for the initial relaxation. Just a couple of reminders about Shavasana. Depending on how your back is this morning, you might choose to have your knees bent and your feet flat, or a cushion underneath your knees for support. But if your back's happy, stretch the legs, separate the feet, let the toes flop to the corners. And then choosing where's most comfortable for your arms, traditionally by the sides, palms up. But otherwise you might choose to have the hands on the belly or the chest or palms down. So adjusting arms and legs until they feel settled and comfortable. And then continue to rest in Shavasana, and I'll just guide you around the body, and we'll take a little bit of time to tune into the breath. So just beginning with awareness of your head, neck and face, and you might need to roll the head or draw the chin to the chest, or maybe wriggle the eyebrows or open and close the mouth. So any actions you need to do to help the head, neck, face area to be settled. And when you return to stillness, just feel the weight of the head resting really heavy on the surface beneath you. Imagine you can switch off the neck muscles, soften the brow and the jaw, and just allow the head, neck and face to rest and relax. Checking in with your shoulders, your arms and hands, making any adjustments to their position. And again, feeling the weight of those body parts. Allow the shoulder blades to be heavy, the arms to flop, the fingers to be soft and easy. Checking in with your back, maybe shifting the shoulders or the hips to help the back become more settled. And tuning into the feeling of the weight of the back resting against the ground. Imagine the muscles of the back spreading wide across your mat as they soften and settle. Checking in with your legs, making adjustments to the position if you need. And if your knees are bent, be aware of the soles of the feet resting really heavy on the ground. If your legs are extended, feel the heels resting really heavy. Just allow the weight of the legs to settle. And then being aware of the whole body. Feeling the body really settling fully into the support of your mat and the ground beneath you. Noticing that the ground is still and steady, letting the body take on those qualities of stillness and steadiness. But within that stillness, being aware of the gentle movement of your breath. Start just by being aware of what the breath's doing naturally, without trying to change it at all. Observing that gentle rise and fall, the ebb and flow of your in-breath and your out-breath. For a few cycles of breath, turn your awareness to the exhale. Feel that as you breathe out, it can take with it anything you wish to release, which could be busy thoughts or tiredness Any feeling of discomfort in the body, just imagine the outgoing breath taking with it whatever's relevant to you. So there's a sense of release of the breath and anything else you wish to feel or visualize. So each out breath clearing, releasing, settling, softening. And with that focus on the out breath, you might find that your exhale lengthens a little. So allow that to happen if it's comfortable. And be aware that as you lengthen the out breath, it makes a little extra space for a nice full deep in breath. And sometimes to aid that process, it can be useful to do a louder out breath, possibly even through the mouth. So a sort of or a sigh. So if that feels like it would work for you, do a few noisier out breaths. And then come back to just a quiet breath in and out through the nose. A nice complete out breath, making space for a full deep in breath. Just spending a few moments resting there in the stillness, observing the breath. And then taking the attention down into the fingers and toes, bringing little gentle movements into the fingers and toes and gradually taking those movements through the ankles, wrists, arms and legs, but just go slowly. You might feel that you want to take your arms overhead for a full body stretch. You might want to hug your knees into your chest, but just take plenty of time stretching, easing, mobilizing, yawning, if there's a yawn there. When you're ready, resting once again with the knees bent, feet flat this time. You might choose to have your hands on your belly or by your sides. We'll just begin with the pelvic rocking. So when you're resting, there's a little gap between the back and the floor. If you squeeze your tummy, tilt your tailbone slightly to the sky, then the back flattens. And then as you release the belly, the pelvis returns to a neutral alignment. So just with your breath, exhaling to squeeze the tummy, rock the pelvis, and inhaling to release. Taking your time, there's not far to go, but you've got the whole breath, that slightly extended breath you've already established. Sometimes with movement, there's the temptation to move more quickly, but try and just work with the slow breath. When you're exhaling, imagine drawing the belly button down through the layers of abdominals towards the spine. So you're really scooping in through the belly, which is good for strengthening the different layers of abdominal wall and for generating a massaging effect on the inner organs. And then when you're releasing to neutral and breathing in, you can let the belly expand with the breath. Noticing how the back is feeling this morning, being kind to your back as you gently rock, loosening and warming that lower back area. And just repeat one more round and then come to rest in stillness. And once you're resting in stillness, imagine the weight of the back really heavy against the ground, allowing the back to soften and settle there. So moving on to mobilizing the hips. If it doesn't work for you to do both legs at the same time, you can do one by one. But if it's comfortable, lift both feet from the ground, put the hands onto the knees, draw the knees towards the torso, and then separate the knees but keep the toes touching. Shift the knees away from you and draw them back together. And then continue on in the circle. So the knees come to the chest, they separate, they move away, and they join. The breath coordinates by exhaling when the knees hug towards you and inhaling as they move away from you. If it doesn't feel comfortable to use the hands, you can just work with the legs alone. And if you feel that you're comfortable to take a slightly deeper stretch, then separate the feet as well as the knees. And just continue on with your own breath rhythm, keeping the breath nice and slow and even. And if it's too much to do both legs at the same time, or even if one hip feels very different to another, it can sometimes be easier to work with one leg at a time. Be guided by how your body feels as to how big to make the movement. We're aiming for a nice, smooth, even circle. When we do these practices, they create heat in the synovial fluid, which then is able to be absorbed into the cartilage. So it's sort of, I always think of it plumping up the inside of the hip joints, creating better or improving the shock absorbency. Good, so just continue for a couple more rounds in that direction. If you need a rest, you might take your feet down to the ground, but otherwise then begin in the other direction. So the knees are touching as they move away from you, and then at the furthest away point they separate, and you can imagine drawing the knees up in the direction of the armpits. Not that they'll get there, but just in that direction. Again, deciding whether you keep the toes touching or separate the feet, whether you use the hands to guide the knees or rest the arms down. Keeping the movement nice and smooth with that slow, deep breath. And just continue on for a few moments at your own pace. Good, and then coming to rest, just take the feet down to the ground and pause for a moment with the knees bent and the feet flat. Make any other stretches that feel helpful. And then we'll work with the hip stretch. So you can cross the ankle to the thigh, or you can cross the thigh to thigh, so the knees are one on top of the other. You can try both and see which feels most helpful for you. You can lift the underneath foot off the ground in either position. And you can choose to rest the arms or to use the hands to hold the legs. If your ankle's to thigh, you can put the hand through the gap. And if you're thigh to thigh, you can just hug around the front of the knees. And once you're in your chosen position, it's worth sort of shifting around a bit, rocking the hips a bit from side to side, just exploring where you find the most beneficial stretch. And once you've found that sort of sweet spot, then just stay there. Focus on the sensation that you're experiencing. When you're breathing out, imagine any discomfort dissipating. And when you're breathing in, imagine creating space in the places where you feel a little restricted. And you can remain in stillness and just focus on the breath. You might choose to keep making little minor adjustments. So tuning into your body, what feels right as you open up the back of that hip in this cross-legged stretch. Take another couple of breaths there. And then when you're ready, just take the feet back down, pause for a moment in a symmetrical position, realign the spine. And when you're ready, repeating with the other leg, choosing whether it's the cross of the ankle to thigh or thigh to thigh, whether you keep the underneath foot on the ground or you lift, deciding if you're holding with your hands, and then all those little micro adjustments that can just find that sweet spot for you on this side. And it can be interesting to notice whether or not it feels similar or quite different on the other side. Once you're in position and tuning into the breath, that sense of the out breath allowing any gripping to soften, any discomfort to dissipate. And the in breath, imagining the space it creates. Imagine sending that expansion of the in breath into the tight spots. Taking a couple more breaths in the cross-legged stretch. And then coming to rest and pause in a symmetrical position, make any stretches that feel useful. And then once again, knees bent, feet flat. From that position, draw one knee in towards the chest, holding either the thigh or the knee or the shin. And just take a moment to make small adjustments with that leg so that you encourage the hip to soften and the leg to fold comfortably in towards the chest. And then stretch out your other leg along the mat. So you're extending from the hip through the knee down to the ankle. The extended leg has a flexed foot, so pushing out through the heel as if you could lengthen the heel down the mat. And as you lengthen the extended leg, drawing the lifted leg in towards you. You might find this quite a strong stretch, in which case stay here, But to make it a little more challenging, you could use an out breath to lift the head up towards the knee and an in breath to lower the head back towards the ground. And you can repeat that lift of the head with the breath, exhaling up and inhaling down. And just continue on, either holding in a static position, or if it's comfortable for you, using the head lifts. So a couple more breaths in the static position, or a couple more lifts of the head if that's what the version you're doing. And then coming to rest, and again find a symmetrical position before you switch to the other side, whether that's knees bent or legs stretched, whatever makes sense to you. And then when you're ready, drawing the other knee in towards the chest. Take some time to get that folded position comfortable with a little rock or shift of the hip and knee. When you stretch out your other leg, imagine it lengthening down the mat away from you, heel flexing and reaching. If you're lifting the head, exhaling up and inhaling down. And if you're using the head lift, try and keep the outstretched leg really anchored to the floor rather than bending the knee to lift the head. So opening up through the front of the hip of the outstretched leg, and then the other leg into that folded position, softening into the hip joint. Whether you're remaining static or moving, keep the breath nice and free. And then coming to rest, back in a symmetrical position, stretching if that's helpful. So moving on to a twisting practice, this is where we need the cushion. So grab cushion or block if you have. And we're making a right angle shape. So you've got a right angle at your knees and a right angle at your hips. And then when you put the cushion under your head, try and rest at the front edge of the cushion rather than having cushion in front of you. So the spare cushion is behind you. So we're lying on our side, right angle at the knees, right angle at the hips. And if you stretch the arms out, so the underneath arms resting on the ground and the top arms resting palm to palm. That's it, great. And then so the practice is to lift your top arm, allow the arm to twist the spine and reach the arm towards the ground behind you. It may or may not touch the ground, that doesn't really matter. Just as far as your shoulder's happy to open. And then from there, you just lift the hand back up to the ceiling and bring the palms to touch each other. The breath is to inhale as the arm lifts and opens out behind you, and to exhale as you return palm to palm. And as you're lifting the arm, the head just rolls against the cushion so that you probably end up looking towards the ceiling, or if it's comfortable, you can continue turning the head to follow the hand as it reaches behind you. So just continue with that with your breath. The legs are really heavy and anchored. The breath is guiding the speed of the movement. Just that sense of opening up through the ribs as you reach out through the arm, inviting the air into the body. And then that closing of the arm sort of helps the breath to release. Working with the slowest breath that feels comfortable to you, so there's plenty of time for the movement. Being aware of the twist through the spine as the arm reaches behind you. Noticing how it feels through the shoulder, being gentle with the shoulder in terms of how much you open the arm. And noticing the sense of expansion that you get through the chest as you open the arm and take that deep breath. And completing the round that you're on, and then do one final round as well. And when you finish that final round, just rest on the side for a moment. Be aware of the connection between the two palms. Let the breath settle, let the body be heavy. And when you're ready, turning onto your other side, adjusting your position and cushion. So checking the position of your body, the right angle at your knees and your hips, the head resting on the edge of the cushion, so the spare cushion's behind you, underneath arm stretched along the ground, palm up, other hand palm down, and beginning the twist, so lifting the arm, exploring the space behind you. You might find it's a very different experience on this other side. Maybe your hand barely touches the ground or gets there easily. And continuing on with your breath, so the expansive in-breath as the arm lifts, welcoming the air into the body. And then as the arm closes, the breath is released. So continuing on with your own breath rhythm, finding the slowest breath that's comfortable to you right now. Being aware of how it feels in this shoulder, whether there's any difference from the other side or it feels quite similar. Noticing how the twist feels through the back. Maybe the back feels different this side than the other. Have that sense of expanding through the chest as the arm opens. Making space through the ribs for a nice full breath. You can even tune into the feeling of the movement of the air against the skin. This practice is twisting the spine and opening the shoulder, but it's also working on anahat, the heart center. And that energy center is connected to the element of air. So that really subtle experience of the air against the skin as you move your arm. So completing the round that you're on, and then one final round. And when you finish the final round, just rest on your side, feel the palms connecting. Be aware of the movement of your breath. Just take a moment to pause. And then returning to rest on your back, just to bring a symmetrical stretch through the spine. We will work just with the simple knee hugging. So you begin with the knees towards the chest and the elbows bent. And then you allow the knees to move forwards just to the point where you've stretched your elbows, but you're still holding the knees, and repeating that movement with the breath. So the out breath is hugging the knees close. The in breath is moving the knees away. If it's uncomfortable to have the knees together, you might choose to separate them. When the knees are together, it means the thighs compress the belly, which has a sort of massaging effect on the inner organs. So a bit of compression is good, but if it's uncomfortable, knees apart. As you're hugging the knees and breathing out, try and scoop the belly down and in, rather than the tendency which is to push the belly muscles up and out. And for a stronger practice, add the lift of the head. So as you hug the knees, the nose lifts towards the knees. And as you release the knees, the head rests back down to the mat. If you feel like you want to generate more heat, you might choose to speed up the movement and the breath, so it's more dynamic. But if you're happy sticking with your slow breath, and just work really slowly with that breath rhythm. And just do one or two more and then come to rest. Once you're resting, you might choose to take a little twist or a stretch of the legs. And then for the next practice, again, lifting the feet off the ground, holding the back of the thighs, the front of the shins, wherever's comfy. If it's too much to have both feet off the ground for this, then work with one leg at a time. We're just going to wriggle the toes and loosen the ankles. So just explore the movements you can do with your toes and ankles. You can squeeze and stretch the toes. You can stretch and flex the feet to loosen the ankles, or you could circle the feet. So just whatever movements feel good to you to bring energy and awareness into the toes, the soles of the feet and the ankles. And then let the feet rest and tuck the hands underneath the knees. So hands on the backs of the thighs, and then stretch one leg up into the air. May or may not be that you fully straighten the knee, depends on how that feels to you and the muscles of the back of the leg. Bend the knee and then reach the other foot up towards the sky, and then come back to bent knees. So we're going to work with this with the breath, exhaling as the heel lifts, inhaling as the knee bends. And if having the feet off the ground the whole time just feels a bit too intense, you can do this from feet flat on the ground. Same process, lifting and lowering. It's like a leg kick, but in slow motion. As you're extending the leg up to the sky, imagine the back of the hip anchoring to the earth and the heel floating to the sky, and the back of the leg opening up in the space between, rather than the temptation to lift the back of the hip to sort of get the leg higher. So the back of the hip stays really anchored, just the heel lifts. And as you move, noticing this mobilizing effect in the knees, the space that's being created down the backs of the legs, finding the slow breath, so the exhale lifts you, the inhale lowers you. And just continue on for a few more breaths, alternating legs as they loosen and mobilize and warm. It's really good to give a stretch to the backs of the legs, because very often when we have a tightness in the lower back, it's related to tightness in the hamstrings in the upper leg. So opening up this space can be quite helpful, not only for the legs, but for the back. Good, and just repeat 1 or 2 more till you feel like you've worked equally with both legs. When you feel balanced, come to rest. As you rest, make any movements or stretches that are helpful. And then just to finish this section, we're going to lift both legs together. For me, I find it easier to sustain if I put my hands underneath my bottom. So I sit on the backs of my hands and then start by bringing the knees into the chest and then extend the legs up whatever angle feels comfortable for you. Again, you can keep a little bend at the knees or you can fully straighten. You might choose to sort of have a little bit of movement, like reaching one leg then the other, and eventually find a still point. And in this still point, imagine that you're reaching up through the top of the head to the top of the mat, reaching out through the tailbone to the bottom of the mat, reaching up to the sky through the heels. So there's this sense of these lines through the body, head to tail, and then tail to heels. The position is essentially a seated forward bend, but we've got gravity acting on us in a different way because the back's on the ground rather than the legs. Keep the breath nice and free. On the in-breaths, imagine lengthening out, particularly through the heels. And on the out-breath, see where you can soften anywhere that's gripping. You might need to have little wriggles and movements while you're there. Stay for as many breaths as feels comfortable for you. Take a rest along the way if you need. And then whenever you're ready, just release, shake, stretch, ease, do whatever feels helpful. So for our next practice, we're coming to the table pose to work with the cat and the cow. You might choose to have a blanket under your ankles or knees, or to use the cushion again under your hands. If the fingers are off the edge of a cushion or a block, it's just a softer stretch for the wrist. Or you can choose to make this position, rest the back of the fist on the ground so that the wrists are not flexed. So take some time to get yourself into the table pose. Make it really square, so the hands are beneath the shoulders, the fingers are spread wide if your palms are on the mat. The knees are hip width apart, head in line with the spine. And although the arms are straight, try not to lock too strongly into the elbow, have a little bit of give there. And then to begin with, we're just going to get the lower back moving. So if you imagine you've got a paintbrush on the tailbone, and you're going to try and draw a circle with the paintbrush. So the belly's moving, the hips are moving, the lower back's moving. You might find the shoulders and head wriggle a bit, but the movement's really in that lower back, mobilizing the sacrum area. Just let the breath be free as you move in that circular action at the tailbone. Pause at a convenient place and reverse the direction. And then come to rest. If you need a rest from weight bearing in the hands, just lift the hands up for a moment and loosen the wrists. And then we'll work with just the regular cat and the cow. So you're scooping in the tummy, Releasing the tailbone and the head down towards the ground. And then moving in the opposite direction, so stretching the belly, tilting the tailbone to the sky, and gently lifting the chin, making sure there's still space in the back of the neck so you don't drop the head too far. The out breath is the cat pose with the squeeze of the belly and the head lowering. The in breath is the cow pose with the stretch of the belly, chest opening, chin lifting. Keep working with your breath to move you from one posture to the other. And although cat-cow is a practice I pretty much always use, approach it with the curiosity of how is your body today. So you might have been gardening or whatever other activities you've been up to. So the experience might change from one week to the next. When you really tune into how you're doing today, you can determine how big or small to make the movement. Being really careful if there's tender places. Another exploration you can do with the cat and the cow is to see how it feels if you've got a little bit less weight in the hands and the weight travels towards the hips a bit more. That can sometimes take the stretch into a slightly different part of the back. Or it might be that you want to put the weight more into the hands. I find weight more in my hands, I get more stretch between my shoulder blades. And weight more to my knees, I get a stronger sense of stretch in my lower back. So you can experiment with exactly where your weight is resting as you do the two movements. And as you repeat, imagine the spine getting more supple, the supporting ligaments warming, becoming more elastic. The sense of the spinal fluid being freed up through the spinal cord. The long breaths, giving a nice regular rhythm to your movement. And that sense of the movement almost never stopping. You just get to the cat pose, and then you're reversing into the cow pose. They're constantly ebbing and flowing like the waves of the sea. And just repeat one or two more rounds. And then come to rest. And when you're resting, choose whether you're happy in the child pose or if you want to be head up, you could be in the rabbit pose with the forearms down. And if you're not comfortable folding at the hips and knees, you could be puppy pose with the head low but the hips high. So just take some time to choose the variation that suits you. Child pose can have the arms forward beneath your head or by your sides, knees together or apart. And once you're in your chosen variation, just focus on softening, unwinding, settling. Each out breath a sense to release and relax. And the in breaths a chance to create space in any places that feel that they're being opened and stretched. Making any little movements as you settle. Sometimes we realise we've gripped or just need to unwind a little somewhere. So keep scanning the body. Although you're active in your awareness of your body and your breath. In a moment, coming back up into the table pose. When you're ready, just taking your time. And then we're working with a little gentle twist in the from the table pose. So, and it also kind of generates a bit of strength because we're going to weight there just through one hand at a time. So if you lift one hand off the ground and imagine the elbows being lifted up towards the sky, as the elbow lifts, it creates a gentle twist through the spine. Keep the belly nice and strong to support the back. And then place the hand back down into the table pose and then lift the other side. So you're allowing the chest to open, the gaze turns, the elbow lifts, and then we come back down. This works with the breath, so you're inhaling as you lift the elbow and take the twist, and you're exhaling as you lower the hand back down towards the ground. It's not a movement that necessarily goes that far. You don't particularly feel like you twist that deeply, but just let the elbow lead the way, the strength of the belly support the spine, and turn as much or as little as feels like it's a gentle challenge without strain or force. And be aware of that sense of strength through the supporting hand as you balance just on one hand at a time. And similarly to the twist that we did lying down, you've got that sense of breathing in as you open up through the chest, inviting the air into the space. Good. When you're resting on just the one hand, make sure that although the arm's strong, there's not that temptation to lock the elbow. Still have a little softness and give at the elbow. Just continue for one or two more rounds till you feel that you've worked equally with both arms. And then when you are balanced, come to rest. And as you rest, you might choose to go back into puppy or child or rabbit pose, or to go back and do some more cat and cow. The cat's joined in now. Hello, cat. So when you're ready, we're going to come up to standing, but you might want to go via a cat and a cow or a downward dog or a forward bend, but just take your time to transition from the mat to upright. So once you're up, just finding Tadasana, so there's a couple of inches between the feet, toes pointing forwards. Steady the legs, but have a softness at the knees. Imagine the tailbone heavy, anchoring you down towards the ground. But at the same time, a sense of space at the waist and length through the rest of the spine, as if the crown of the head were anchoring to the sky. So there's that two-way pull through the spine. Face, shoulders, arms and hands relaxed and easy. Take a moment to stand steady, tune into the breath. And then we're going to just do a practice that sort of loosens the shoulders and opens up the upper chest and back. So if you have your fingertips just really lightly touching the back of the head, and we're going to very gently lift the chin, but feel the support of the fingertips. As you lift the chin, you can think about drawing the elbows back to create space through the upper chest. And as the elbows draw back, there's a slight slide of the shoulder blades towards each other. There's a feeling of strength between the shoulder blades and openness in the chest. And then moving the other way, so the head tilts forwards, the elbows draw forwards, the space between the shoulder blades opens and the space in the chest closes a little bit. So we're just going to move between those two positions, opening up through the chest and the chin, and then drawing the elbows forward and tilting the head forwards. The in-breath as the chest opens, the chin lifts. The out-breath as the head releases forwards. And for me, I find that my body feels more anchored if I have a slight bend in my knees. So you can experiment with straight legs or bent legs. Feel like you're really anchored through the legs, heavy tailbone, and then that anchoredness allows for this fluidity and movement at the top of the spine, tilting the head and the upper back forwards and backwards. Have that sense of the shoulder blades sliding towards each other as the chest opens and the chin lifts, and the shoulder blades sliding apart from each other as the elbows draw forwards. So we're getting lots of movement through that neck, upper back area. And the feeling of the hands on the head is more supportive. There's not sort of pulling or pushing, but just supporting, steadying. And the next time that you find yourself with your elbows forwards, just release the hands down, let the arms swing, lift the body up to upright again, and just have a little swing and a shrug of the arms and the shoulders. And then a very similar movement in terms of the torso, but the arms are out like wings. So your same process, the shoulder blades separate. This time the hands draw towards each other and the head lowers. And then sliding the shoulder blades towards each other, opening the chest and lifting the chin. So it's just the same movement, but you've got the extension of the arms as well. The breath is exhaling as the hands draw towards each other, the head lowers. And you're inhaling as your chest opens and your chin lifts. For this one, I find I really do need to bend my knees as my head and hands come forwards, but actually it feels helpful to me to stretch my knees as the chest opens and the chin lifts. So experiment for you whether bent or straight knees works, or whether bending on the forward movement and stretching on the backward movement works. So similar movement for the shoulders and the neck, but just a little bit of extra stretch through the spine. You can take the body further forwards than the previous practice if that's comfortable. Good, so we're working on opening up that chest, upper back area, loosening the shoulders, finding a nice spacious deep breath. And the next time that you find yourself with the head and hands forwards, just release the hands down, lift the head up, and then swing. You might swing the arms forward and backwards, you might swing them side to side, you might roll the shoulders, so just whatever feels useful. Good, so then back in Tadasana, bend the knees, let the arms be really loose and dangly, and then lift one arm up overhead. And as you do so, keeping sort of really anchored from the hips down to the ground, but lift up out of that side. Imagine creating space between every rib and the armpit, all the way up to the fingertips. And this other hand is heavy, dangling down towards the earth. Come back to the center, and then lift the other arm. So hips, legs really anchored, but lifting out of the waist through the ribs, the armpit to the fingertips. And then coming back to center. Always just keeping in that really gentle squat With the breath, you're inhaling as you lift, extend the side, exhaling as you return to upright. So the movement is guided by your breath in terms of how fast or slow you move. Accessing the slowest breath that feels comfortable. And again, it's about that sense of openness through the ribs, space in the lungs, mobilizing the shoulder. Depending on how the shoulder is, you might not lift the arm that high, it might remain more out to the side, but if it's comfortable, it can come right over towards the ear. Anchoring and staying quite symmetrical from hips to heels, but you've got that lateral stretch through the upper torso. Keeping nice and steady at the core, at the belly. So there's support there to steady the spine as it bends one side and then the other. Keep going a couple more rounds. So the in breath is the lift, the out breath is the lower. And when you feel that you've worked equally with both arms, then come back to the center and pause. Release the feet, release the shoulders. And then this next practice is really about the shoulder blades again. So if you have one palm up and bend the opposite elbow, so this is a bit like I'm a teapot, the position. So you've got this position happening, and the lower arm is coming down towards the leg, the upper arm's lifting up towards the sky, and then switch them over. So there's a sort of wave motion through the arms. So you've got this elbow lifting, this elbow drawing down. And then once you've got the sort of coordination with the arms, if you think about it actually coming from the shoulder blade, so there's a sense of lengthening out from under the shoulder blade as the elbow lifts and creates lift through the ribs. And then this other shoulder blade is sliding down as the elbow draws down. So although the visible thing is that the arms are moving, it's actually really coming from the back of the shoulder blades. And this sense of wriggling through and up and out and drawing down and in. My friend that teaches this calls it seaweed arms. So you can imagine sort of, there's quite a soft, floaty quality to the arms, but this more muscly quality to the movement of the shoulders in the core of the body. And then the arms are just flowing along with that movement of the shoulder blades. So for me, I kind of lift my shoulder up a little bit and really try and reach up and out from under my shoulder blade. And then the other side is drawing down and in. Don't worry so much about what the breath's doing, just let the breath flow naturally. Make sure that it's not holding as you concentrate on the movement. Again, for me, if I have my knees bent, it feels like I'm more anchored to the ground. And then I can create this fluid movement through the ribs, through the shoulder blades, through the arms. Lovely. So just do one or two more till you feel like you've worked equally with both arms. And when you feel balanced, come back to the center. In the center, you might want to roll the shoulders or shake the arms or shake the legs, anything that feels useful. And then we're coming to a gentle back bend. We're going to stay here for a few breaths. So we don't want to go sort of to the maximum back bend. We want to treat it a bit sort of in an exploratory way. So for this, the knees are bent, the feet are flat. The spine's nice and tall, and then lift the arms. See whether a space between the arms is more comfortable for the shoulders and the neck, or whether a narrow position is equally comfortable. And then as if you're reaching up from your belly button to your ribs, create a sense of length through the upper abdomen. Encourage a slight squeeze between the shoulder blades to open up through the chest. And then extending through the fingertips towards the sky, maybe lifting the chin. But have a little bit of movement there. So although you're reaching up and you're fairly still, have a little sort of explore as if you're reaching one hand and the other up towards the sky. You can have a little wriggle with the shoulder blades, so you can extend through the chest. Just kind of be there, but keep moving. You might choose to release the neck a little bit. So from the feet are really anchored to the ground, but from the belly up, you're really reaching for the sky. And then just release, give the shoulders a roll, have a rest from that upward position. And then coming forwards, if you bend the knees and just start by literally lowering the head and the shoulders so that the fingertips are round about the middle of the thigh. Just pause there, see where you feel the stretch through the back. Take a few breaths, let the arms be really loose. And then creep a bit further forward so the fingertips are nearer to the knees. Let the back round a bit more. You might find this is plenty enough for you to forward bend and you don't want to go any further. If it's comfortable, move so the hands are just below the knees. Take a couple of breaths there. Whenever you pause and breathe, focus on the place in the body where you feel the stretch and use the in-breath to make space. And then you can creep a bit further forward so the hands are nearer the shins. And just repeat that process. So move a little bit deeper into a forward bend. Take a couple of breaths and then creep a bit further so that you're exploring the stretch through the back, stopping at the lowest point that feels like it's comfortable and enough for you. And it might be that you end up right the way down with the hands by the feet, but it might be that you stay higher up. So just exploring that, gently deepening the stretch. Pausing for a couple of breaths. Continuing to deepen the stretch if that's appropriate for you. Pausing for a couple of breaths. And when you reach wherever the maximum is for you for today, then just, again, be explorative about it. So move around. You could shift the weight from foot to foot. You could loosen the arms. You might need to nod the head to release the neck. You might choose to straighten the back of one knee, then the other knee. So just little gentle exploratory movements within the posture, just to help the body unwind and loosen and soften. All the while using the slow deep breath. On the out breaths, imagine softening. On the in breaths, imagine space and the tight spots. Just spend a couple more breaths in whatever position you've reached. Keep that little gentle movements going. And then we've been there for a while, so come up really slowly. You might walk the hands up the legs. Try and let the chin stay resting down so that the head is the final thing to lift. And when you're upright, just take a moment to steady yourself. And then bringing the palms together in front of you, we're going to revisit that upward-backward stretch. So lifting the arms, anchoring the feet, reaching from the waist to the ribs, to the chest and chin. Pause there, that little bit of movement, exploring the space above you, long deep breaths. And from here, we're going to move into the forward bend that you were just in, whatever depth that was. Bring the palms together, exhale and roll your way forward and down. When you reach wherever your maximum is for today, have a little explore of the space down there. Loosen the neck, loosen the arms, keep the breath nice and free. And then this time we're coming up by bending the knees and reaching the arms to the side like wings. And the arms travel up, overhead, and then the palms join overhead and come back down in front of the heart center. So repeating that real slow version of the forward and backward bend, so lifting the arms, pausing, breathing, having a little explore of the space above you. And then on a convenient out breath, bring the palms together, roll into your forward bend. Release the arms and the neck, breathe deeply. Have an explore down there, breathe freely. Preparing to come up, bend the knees, reach the arms sideways. Inhale as you come back up. And exhale as the palms join and come back down in front of the heart center. So then slightly increasing the speed in that we won't pause in the different places. So inhale, reaching up. Exhale as the palms join and you roll forwards and down. Loosen the neck and the shoulders and the arms. Then inhale as the arms reach sideways and up, lifting your torso. And exhale, palms together. Twice more. Inhale as you lift and extend to the sky. Exhale as you roll forwards and down, finding that loose, floppy position. Inhale, arms expand to the side and rise up. Exhale, palms together. One final time. Inhale, expand and extend. Exhale, roll forwards and down. Inhale, arms sideways and rise. Exhale, palms together at the heart center. Release the arms, shake out the legs. Take a moment to relax. Good, so we're going to work with the goddess squat and turn the goddess squat into a balance, which I think we pretty much did last time, but I revisited that. So feet apart, toes are pointing to the corners. Just put the hands on the hips and do a couple of preparatory bends and stretches through the legs, just getting the sense of strength in the inner thighs so that the knees go in the same line as the toes. And imagine the little toes being really anchored. If the inner thighs get loose and the little toes come up, then the feet roll in. So we want to keep that nice open position. Come up with the legs and just rest the legs for a moment, lift the arms. So the position begins with the arms outstretched, and then you find right angles at the armpits and the elbows, space between the fingers, and that's the arm position. Bringing the arms and legs together, so stretch up through the fingers, bend the knees and the elbows simultaneously, and then stretch up through the legs and the arms. Inhale at the top, exhale as you squat. Continue on with your own breath, squatting to a depth that gives you a feeling of strength and challenge, but without going so low that it means your hips swing backwards or forwards. You can also experiment with the distance between your feet. It's sometimes easier to get a deeper squat with a wider position. We want to feel like the legs are being challenged, but without causing strain. The breath is nice and free. The in-breath expansive, lifting you up. The out-breath helping you to sort of engage the belly, the legs, the arms as you exhale and feel that strength through the body. In a moment, we're going to come into the squat and hold. So on your next one, come into the squat and hold. Have that sense of strength in the inner thighs, rooting to the ground through the feet, supporting the belly, lengthening the spine, broad at the chest. And imagine the arms just being supported on clouds. So you're holding them there, but they're not rigid and tense. There's a softness, space through the fingers, airflow through the fingers, softness in the face, breath nice and free. Shaking in the legs is normal, means you're generating strength. Heat is also a sign that you're developing stamina. Hold for as many breaths as feels like it gives you a sense of challenge, but not pushing too far. And when you've had enough, you know when that moment is. Stretch the knees, bring the feet into parallel, and just take a forward bend. It might be that you tilt your torso forward a little, or it might be that you take the body right the way down. See what works for you. And when you are in that forward bend, keep the movement going. You might shift the weight from foot to foot, wriggle the torso, shake out the arms, loosen the neck. And then when you're ready, coming back to upright. Returning to the wide position with the toes pointing to the corners. And we're going to work with a similar movement, but we're going to balance on one leg. So if I show you what I mean, we'll start with this position, as we did with the goddess squat, and then we shift the weight to one leg. So we're still squatting, but the other leg's lifting, and the leg comes behind. So you're just in that position. The arms are following the same pattern. And then we come back to the center in symmetry, shift the weight over to the other side. The in-breath is the middle position, the out-breath is the shift. It just takes a few repetitions to get that sense of how far you have to shift your body weight to get really anchored over the supporting leg. When you're balancing on that bent knee, still that same sense of strength in the inner thigh, just like with the goddess squat. All the toes anchored to the ground. Trying to keep the elbows directly out to the side. It's easy for the arms to go backwards or forwards, but have the sense of being really just going out from the shoulders. The lifting foot's coming up behind, so there's a little squeeze in the hamstring to lift up the foot. It can be lifted high or low. And then just for a slightly different challenge, we're going to lift the foot in front. So it's exactly the same, symmetrical in the middle, but then the foot lifts in front, so you're in this position. So when you're carrying the weight of the leg in front of you instead of behind, just have to adjust your balance on your standing leg. So each time you're settling into the balance, imagine the hips and the shoulders staying really square with each other. The weight's traveling down to the supporting leg, but at the same time, imagine the crown of the head still lifting to the sky. Good. So very elegant, graceful, traveling balance. Do one or two more so that you feel that you've worked equally with both sides. And then when you're balanced, come back to the center, turn the feet into parallel, take a forward bend, either just keeping the torso quite lifted or dropping all the way down. Wiggle the shoulders, shake out the arms, loosen, do anything else that feels useful to you. And then we'll just come back to Tadasana for a moment. And in Tadasana, feel the feet anchoring to the ground, soften the knees, heavy tailbone, length through the spine, soft through the shoulders, the arms and the hands. Find that symmetry. And just tune into the breath for a moment. Good. So we're going to come back down to the mat for the relaxation. I realise I'm running over just a little bit, so if you do need to dash, then feel free. But if you've got a bit more time, then get ready for the relaxation. So grabbing layers, socks, blankets, cushions, all that you need to be comfortable. And as you settle, making any movements or stretches that feel useful to you, figuring out if you want to rest with the legs extended or the knees bent, where feels most relaxing for your arms. And then we'll work around the body, squeezing and releasing. So beginning with your right foot and leg, squeeze, tense, tighten and grip. And then exhale and soften. Squeeze, tense, tighten and grip your other foot and leg. And exhale to release. Squeeze the buttocks tightly so your hips raise a little bit. And exhale, release. Press the backs of the shoulders down so the chest expands. And exhale, release. Draw your shoulders towards your ears, squeezing into the neck. And exhale, release. Make two fists, tense, tighten and grip both arms. And exhale, release. Screw up the face so the eyes and mouth tightly close. Exhale, release. Lift the eyebrows, open the eyes, stretch the mouth and extend the tongue if it's comfortable, breathing out through the mouth in the lion pose. Take a moment to adjust head, arms, legs, spine. Settle back into stillness. Tune into the breath. And let the body remain in stillness while you follow the words in your mind and guide your awareness to each body part in turn. I relax my toes, the soles of my feet, my heels. I relax my ankles, my calves, my shins. I relax my knees, my thighs, my buttocks and hips. I breathe deeply, my legs are relaxing. I breathe deeply, my legs are relaxed. I relax my lower back, my middle back, my upper back. I relax my abdomen and internal organs. I relax my chest, my heart, my lungs. I breathe deeply, my torso is relaxing. I breathe deeply, my torso is relaxed. I relax my fingers, my palms, my wrists. I relax my lower arms, my elbows, my upper arms. I relax my shoulder blades and collarbone. I breathe deeply, my arms are relaxing. I breathe deeply, my arms are relaxed. I relax my neck, my throat, my jaw. I relax my mouth, my cheeks, my ears. I relax my nose, my eyes, my eyebrows. I relax my forehead, my scalp, my brain. I breathe deeply, my head and face are relaxing. I breathe deeply, my head and face are relaxed. My whole body is relaxing. My whole body is relaxed. Bringing your awareness to the breath. Finding a nice complete out breath, making space for a full deep in breath. Taking your awareness through the body and making movements that feel pleasant to you. Stretching, easing, loosening. Maybe practicing palming. You can rub the hands vigorously and cup the warm hands over the closed eyes or over another body part that feels like it needs a bit of support. Take plenty of time to transition from lying to seated, maybe resting on one side along the way. And you might choose to sit on the ground or a chair or your sofa. When you make it back to upright, just find a position that's comfortable for your legs. Feel your sit bones and pelvis anchored to the surface beneath you. From the anchored place, feel that the spine rises up long and light to the sky. And we're just going to lift the arms overhead on an in-breath and bring the palms together on an out-breath. And if you wish, you can add a hum sound to the out-breath. So reaching up through the arms, breathing in, and then palms together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.